Our guest today on Caribbean is Vince Adams. Vince is a Guyanese residing out here in the United States, but he's an expert of a kind. And I mean, we were chatting before, and I started to laugh, and I was surprised. Welcome to our program, Vince.
Hey, nice being here for the first time, Vaughn, and hopefully it won't be the last.
I am sure, man. I'm sure. But for the benefit of our listeners, tell us, what are you doing? What do you do? What's your specialty?
Well, well, of course, like you said, I'm a Guyanese, come from a little village, if you will, of Christianborg, Linden. I played cricket for Guyana, by the way, as a teenager before I got into academics. Yeah, as a teenager, I played cricket for Guyana. I got into an automobile accident today, just after I broke into the Guyana team at the tender age of 19 and had to switch to academics. And,
Right, right.
when I look back, only the maker knows why. And, I would never have changed it for anything. But anyway, no, I came up here. I worked for British Petroleum after graduating. I went to graduate schools through my PhDs and everything else.
Right, 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 right.
And then I worked for American Oil Company, which was Amoco. I don't know if you guys have Amoco gas station.
Yes, yes, yeah. I remember Amoko, yeah.
Right. Well, now it's British Petroleum. So I was a senior petroleum engineer there, and then of course after the oil industry went down, I went to work for the United States Department of Energy, and I stayed there for for 30
Lord,
years and
Lord.
some months, and moved my way up to the highest ranking civilians,
Right,
could
right,
call the senior executive service, um, SESers. We were the highest ranking officials that run the day-to-day operations of the nation's business. And
right,
the political appointees come and go with every administration, but we
right,
stay on as the professionals who run the, and we, our positions are equivalent to we're the civilian equivalent to the generals
right.
in
But
the military. So that's in my final years, my final 11 years, as a matter of fact, I was a senior executive for the final 11 years, and I I started my career basically here with the government in a place called Oak Ridge, Tennessee,
uh,
which is the science capital of the world. And this is where Albert Einstein and those guys hung out when we were building the nuclear weapons complex. I'm sure you heard about the Manhattan Project. So
yeah, yeah.
all of that is this Oak Ridge. So
Right,
I
right.
started my career here, but then had to make my rounds in Washington at various, complexes.
Institutions, yeah.
A lot of things, most of the nation and even politicians, sometimes it's kind of funny listening to some politicians running for the presidency, and they say, well, we're going to shut down the Department of Energy,
Yes, yes.
not realizing that the Department of Energy not only is responsible for energy, it's also responsible for the nuclear weapons complex of the nation.
Right,
It's
right,
not the military. We build the nuclear weapons complex, we maintain it, and of course the military use it. We are also responsible for science of the nation.
right, right.
All of the national laboratories, Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, all where we do all the research belong to the Department of Energy. So that's what I've been, at the
Doing,
highest level
but
managing for the government.
so Guyana really has Guyana. I mean, how can I put it? How have you been able to interact for Guyana or with Guyana in any sense?
Yes, what had happened, I retired in 2016, at the end of 2016, and as soon as I retired, well, I used to I still headed some hometown associations, Guyana hometown associations that did voluntary work, like take medical missions every year. I was chairman of the Linden Fund USA, one of the big international, more famous hometown association.
Yeah.
I was head of that for like 12 years. So every year we took down medical missions, education,
Right, right, right.
workshops, and I was deeply involved, even advising the government on certain things. But and then so as soon as I retired, I was asked to come back especially with Exxon discovery of oil, since that's one of my specialties.
Right, right, right,
So I came back, I went back to Guyana to advise on that, the oil and gas, and to head the Guyana Environmental Protection Agency.
right.
And then when the government changed, I returned back to my hometown of my U.S. hometown of Oak Ridge,
Right. But
Tennessee.
were you there anytime with Burnham and all those guys?
Yes, I was. I left. I was in the first batch, the first graduate, the class of engineers, the first class of engineers to graduate with a bachelor's degree from the University of Guyana.
Uh-huh.
It was a class of 11, and we were specially trained by the United Nations Development Program through the University of Michigan at UG. UG had just opened up New Brand at Turkine, and we were 11 of us were trained to start the Guyana Water Authority.
Ah,
So we the ones who started the Guyana Water Authority. So
right,
I
right,
had to
right,
serve my 4 years. All of that was during the time of Burnham.
right, right, right.
Had to serve that time, and then when that time was finished, I migrated to the U.S., went into graduate schools, and
And the rest is history.
the rest is history.
Now that we're in these times, what comes to your mind? How do you, I mean, there's a Guyana, Venezuela, Trinidad, Milieu, and I mean, what comes to your mind? What do you see as a Guyanese, as a man involved in the energy situation?
I see great potential. I've said before, even in and I used to be around. I used to be in kind of a high demand, giving speeches in the diaspora throughout North America, Canada,
Mhm.
and throughout the
Right.
United States, especially during independence and republic celebrations. And I've always said, even before we discovered oil, Guyana has the potential to become the richest country on the planet. And the reason is we take so much for granted in terms we've got a small population to
Yes.
sustain. We've got water. Look at all the richest countries in the world in the desert in the Middle East. They have no water.
Yeah.
Water is much more precious than oil for them. We've got water, unlimited quantities of water.
Uh-huh.
We've got all kinds of natural resources, except that we don't manage them correctly. Bauxite, sugar, agriculture. Our
Yes.
country, we've got so much of vast land that is fertile land,
Yeah, yeah.
and agriculture should be our number one priority.
And
Um,
cotton.
when I look on the shelves, wherever you go, you see all kinds of products from Jamaica and all these little islands, Trinidad. And I have never seen anything from Guyana in my neck of the woods anyway. And Guyana has the largest potential with the water, fresh water supply, a small population. And here's the other thing: we do not get natural disasters. We
Yeah.
don't get any hurricanes and anything else. I mean, and 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 I've spoken about this. I remember even at I was a guest speaker. I was the keynote speaker at the University of Ghana graduation class in 2016. And I looked at all the politicians in the first row, Mr. Grange, and I said the same exact thing. I said Guyana has the potential to become to be the richest country on the planet. And lo and behold, here comes on top of everything else, here comes this big bonus of oil.
Right,
I
right.
mean, what else could we ask for? Like agriculture, for example. Um, when you look at and we, where I was at the executive level, one of the things that we always do, we always had to, when we crafted our budgets, we had to look at other countries, what they were doing, so that we could remain competitive. And the whole theme was to how do we remain competitive? As a matter of
Right,
fact, at one time after the world economic crisis in 2008, we were required to go to MIT because we sponsored a program, we meaning the government of the US sponsored a program with MIT and Harvard, So executives like myself had to go to MIT for 1 to 2 weeks every 6 months. And the class comprised of executives like myself and all of the executives from the major companies throughout throughout the USA, so
Yeah.
that we can see what, how do we, and the whole theme of it was how do you keep America competitive. So we would study what other countries are doing, the good, bad, and indifferent,
Right.
and then we would, you know, take the good and understand the bad, and so we always maintain competitiveness. But one of the things that came out loud and clear there, it was when you ask even the companies, the executives,
Uh-huh.
what's the one thing that drives you to go and invest in country, or the three things, and they said education, education, education.
Yeah.
And you see, the old paradigm was infrastructure, and that's, so we in Guyana we have the old paradigm of infrastructure, and it's not even and infrastructure is not even a number two, by the way. It is to follow the rule of law, meaning you got strong institutions.
Yes. Yes.
And the thing is, when you follow the rule of law, have strong institutions, the workers have that discipline to follow rules. They come to work on time. They
Hmm.
follow rules. They've got that discipline, that work ethic. So, but we've got it reversed. But the other thing that we learned in terms of agriculture was that the need for food, the food requirement will be doubled by the year 2050.
Yeah.
That's just 25 years from now. You
Yes.
and I will still be kicking, you
Yeah.
know? So, but the world food production, I mean, the requirement will be doubled by 2050,
Right.
and because of the increase in population, etc.
Population. Right.
But the challenge is, and this comes from the United Nations, the challenge is that because of climate change and everything else, there are a lot of countries who are not going to be able to provide that food that they're now providing. And
Right.
what the United Nations is looking at, they're looking at our region where Guyana is located to provide that food.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Guyana is right at the center of it. We've got a lot of land. We've got everything that is required, lots of land, lots of water, fertile everything.
Right. Right.
But that's where our vision should be focused, because oil is gonna be gone in 20 25 years.
Right.
So
Right.
what we should be investing this oil money in those priorities:
Right.
education, strong institutions, agriculture, healthcare. But what is happening now is that we put in the money in agriculture. We don't have, and the people, and it's just, it's for friends and families. When you put 60% of your entire budget, I mean, in infrastructure,
Yeah.
and then when you look, it's 1% of the people in Guyana who are getting all of that infrastructure money,
Yeah.
and what they're doing, they're wasting close to 50% of it, because none of them is just their friends who they're giving the contract to. They're
Right.
wasting the money when it could go into these critical programs. So that's, we've got everything upside down, and the corruption is rampant. The corruption is rampant because when you give your friends contract, and it's not a secret, when you give people a contract who've never to build, $1 billion in contract to build a sluice system,
Yeah.
when all they did before, this contractor did before was, just you had a mic in his hands. Another one did entertainment, but just because they belong to that party,
Right.
it's egregious, and it's corrupt. So that's what we're dealing with. Until we cut out those things and have capable people to do our planning,
Yeah.
we are still gonna the money, unfortunately, it's not gonna be spent wisely for the population. When you have the fastest growing economy in the world right now, it's Guyana, the fastest growing economy.
Yeah.
When you have the fastest growing economy with 53% of its population, more than half of its population, living on $5 per day.
Yeah.
$5 per day.
Yeah.
The GDP, the GDP now for Guyana is even more per capita, is more than the United States. It's 91,000 US dollars per
Yeah.
day, not per day, per capita.
Yeah.
And then how could you have all these great numbers? these economic metrics in your favor to such a great extent, and more than half of the population is living in poverty.
Yeah.
That's where the focus should be, to take care of that, the more than that half of population, and that's not what is happening right now.
As we conclude, how do you see them coping with the situation that's going on in the US with Trump and all those things?
You mean how does Guyana cope?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, well, in terms of I guess you're talking about the tariff for one
right.
thing, the 38%.
Yeah,
Well, I think what's going to happen, because it came out, and the reason why we get that 30, the way they calculate it, it's because we had well, the United States had a trade deficit with us
yeah,
because of the export of oil.
right,
Oil comes from most of our exports.
right,
So that was counted. Well, I guess after the lobbying of the people in the United States, big oil maybe had lobbied, they've exempted they've exempted oil from the tariff.
right,
So I'm hoping that the government of Guyana now will go back and get with the US government and renegotiate
right,
to take, and if they take oil out of the equation, then that 38% might even disappear, or at least drop to maybe
right,
10% or so, which would make a huge difference, because Guyana is not, especially if you're going to invest in manufacturing and those type of things, you want to be competitive. But so that's where we are. I think it's going to change. I think it's going to change after some renegotiations.
Well, boy, my wonderful experience in Guyana, one of them is going to the area of Kimbia.
Yes, yes,
Before
yep, yep,
President Forbes Burnham sent me out there to see. You see,
yep.
you can't come to visit and do a program on Guyana without going to the interior.
That's right.
And they packed me out to Kimbia, and man, it was the most beautiful sight. The first time I ever saw water that was black from the edge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful, man.
Well, Kimbia, but here was a man with vision. If you remember, Ford Burnham he was one of the people with the agriculture vision.
Yes, yes.
Kimbia, I'm sure when you went to Kimbia, that was the national service. He had a national
Right, right.
service
They were
school.
working cotton, man. I couldn't believe.
That's exactly right. So he was the guy, because if you remember, he had banned import of food items,
Right, right.
and everybody had a kitchen garden. I remember going every yard, and they used to give free seeds. He had even set up an agriculture bank. So
Yeah,
here was a guy with that vision. He had the vision exactly what I told you about there. So he
yeah,
had, he was ahead of the game. It was about the education, because he was sent, people were going on scholarships and being
yeah.
educated, and it was education and agriculture. So he had that vision that has really disappeared, that we need to get back to.
Well, Vince, I want to thank you so much, man. This has been a wonderful discourse,
Yeah.
and I hope we can talk again on another occasion. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Nice, 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 nice chatting with you,
All
Vaughn.
right.
Take
I've
care.
been speaking. I've been speaking with Vince Adams from Guyana, who is now residing in the United States, still in the U.S. This is Von Martin. Caribbeana continues.